Good afternoon, everybody. Today's Battle Rhythm, Advocating for Military Child-Giver Children, will be hosted by Caitlin Cashwell. Caitlin is Director of Community Integration. Community integration is America's Warrior Partnership's proven model that provides communities with tools and knowledge to implement a customized program that is responsive to local veterans, their families, and caregivers. To find out more about community integration, visit americaswarriorpartnership.org/community integration. That's it for me. Caitlin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Allison, and thank you all for joining us today. I want to say welcome to affiliate communities, 4-Star Alliance members, veteran serving organizations, and guests. Thank you all so much for joining us. We know it's spring break time and people have varying schedules, but we appreciate you being a part of this very important topic. Today, we have an exciting panel of experts to provide insights and information about resources for military caregiver children. I'd like to welcome today's guests. Hannah Hutler-Boyd, Program Manager for Hidden Helpers, Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Lauryn Cantrell, Communications Coordinator, Adult Hidden Helper for Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Kelly Hunsucker, Hidden Helper Caregiver with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Lori Noonan, Chief Operating Officer with Camp Corral, and Sabrina Huda, she's the Project Director for U.S. Social Impact with the Sesame Workshop. After learning from our panelists, we will go into interactive breakout rooms so that we can further the discussion of this topic. And today's session will conclude at 3:15. Feel free to add questions and thoughts in the chat box as we go along. We will have time for answering questions, hopefully, and we will try to address as many questions as possible that's allowed. I'm going to pass the panel over to today's moderator, who is Hannah Hutler-Boyd. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I really want to give everybody a quick moment to introduce themselves and who they are and their organization and what they do. So I'm just going to go in the order you appear on my screen. So Lauryn, why don't you start off with a quick introduction?
From the Elizabeth Dole Foundation to the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. So hi, everyone. I'm Lauryn Cantrell, Communications Coordinator at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. I have been with the foundation for a little over a year and a half, where I work in the communications department, helping to promote the foundation, our programmatic and advocacy efforts, and help military and veteran caregivers share their story to highlight the unique experiences of our nation's hidden heroes and their helpers, and to shine a light on this unseen and underserved community. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Lauryn. Kelly, why don't you go ahead on next?
I'm sorry, the dogs were barking right when you said my name. I apologize. Maybe I'll come last.
Okay, well then let's go to Lori, and Sabrina, you are on deck.
Okay, well, hope my dog doesn't bark, but hi, I'm Lori Noonan. I'm a Navy veteran and active duty Army spouse, and also I'm the COO at Camp Corral. And Camp Corral is a national nonprofit dedicated to transforming the lives of children of wounded, ill, and fallen military heroes through camp, advocacy, and enrichment programs. This year, we're hosting 17 summer camp sessions in 15 different states, 6 family camp retreats, and so far this year, we've served about 500 military-connected children through our virtual programs and peer support groups.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Sabrina.
Hi, everybody. Thank you again so much for having Sesame Workshop here. I don't have any dogs. I do have a newborn in the background, so you may hear her, so I'll apologize in advance. I am Sabrina Huda. I work at Sesame Workshop. You may know us by Sesame Street, the TV show. Many people don't know we're a nonprofit, and we've also been serving military families and veteran families for 15 years. I have the wonderful pleasure on working on the team that does that. And, recently we've launched our Caregiving Resources, and our goal is how do we really help families through their entire military and veteran journey. And I'm really excited to be here to share some of those resources with all of you, and also learn from you what else we could do to really support families and also all of the providers and the professionals who are supporting these families.
Lovely. Thank you, Sabrina. Kelly, are we good?
We're good. Yes,
Fabulous.
I apologize again. Thank you guys so much. I'm Kelly Hunsucker. I am the Fellows Program Coordinator at Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Also a military caregiver to my husband and our 3 children who are our little hidden helper rock stars around our house. So happy to provide insight both from what the foundation does to support, but also some real life examples of the struggles that hidden helpers can face.
Lovely. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you all for being here today. I am thrilled that we are going to be able to have this conversation both with lived experience in multiple facets, as well as some of our resource providers in the field. So it should be a great discussion. Y'all drop those questions in the chat and we will get to them towards the end of our discussion. So just a little bit of background. I am Hannah. I am with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and I work on all things hidden helpers over here. And so last fall, EDF released a first of its kind study on caregiving kids in veteran households, or our hidden helpers. And so we have a couple key takeaways that I want to frame our discussion with today. We now know that approximately 2.3 million children under the age of 18 live with a veteran who is disabled, or are hidden helpers. Children can experience isolation, have difficulties expressing their emotions, face challenges learning in school, and have more mental health challenges than their peers or their active duty peers in this setting. We also know that there's a little bit of a disconnect too, and often children and parents alike have a challenging time recognizing their kids or themselves as kids in this caregiving role in the household. And so with that, I would love to turn to Lauryn and start a little bit with hearing and elevating the hidden helper voice. Lauryn talked a little bit about that challenge of recognizing yourself as a child in that caregiving role. Can you tell us a little bit about your hidden helper journey of discovery?
Happy to. So my journey towards recognizing myself as a hidden helper began at the foundation. When I first joined, and even during the interview process for this position, I understood myself and identified as the daughter of a United States Navy veteran after my dad served in the military for 25 years. And my dad retired before I was born, and I grew up in the Northern Virginia area between Fort Belvoir and Quantico, and where many of my peers came from military families or whose parents worked in the environment, or worked in the government. I had a connection to the military, but a different experience than that of children who grew up in an active duty family. When I was a sophomore in high school, my dad experienced 2 seizures, which impacted his mobility and his memory. And after a stay at the hospital, a rehabilitation center, and trips to neurologists in Richmond, which also doubled as makeshift college tours, my dad's health, unfortunately, it improved. He focused on his health, and as a family, we were in a really good place, and we were very hopeful. My mom managed a lot of the responsibilities at home because of the unpredictability of his invisible injury. They were able to still work through things together, but your mind can't help but think of if things were to get worse. And so I decided to go to college within 30 minutes of home so I could still live on campus, have the college experience that my parents and myself wanted for me, but still just only being a short drive in case anything were to happen. And unfortunately, something did happen. So in the second semester of my sophomore year of college, when my dad's health took an even worse turn, I had returned home from studying abroad in Paris for 2 weeks during the winter break. I got home where my mom had told me my dad was bedridden and had trouble walking. He was then taken to Fort Belvoir Community Hospital, where we learned my dad had very low B vitamin levels, which were reversible, so he could still regain his mobility. But we also learned of the damage the seizures caused years earlier, and that he had a form of early onset Alzheimer's. He was experiencing troubles with his memory. He had mood swings, sundowners, and difficulty completing everyday tasks. And my mom didn't want to tell me at first all that was going on in the home, at risk of impacting my college experience. But as it turns out, my dad's memory had severely deteriorated. So after weeks at rehabilitation centers and the advice of doctors, my dad has been at an assisted living facility where the routine provides him stability and it ensures his own safety. My mom manages his care while also caring for my soon-to-be 94-year-old grandmother. And even though I was a teenager and a young adult when this occurred, I realized I was a hidden helper thanks to my coworkers. It was in my first month at the foundation where I learned of the research we commissioned on military caregiver kids, and talking through my experiences, I learned I am a hidden helper and my mom is a military caregiver. I provide a lot of emotional support. And I help my mom manage home responsibilities and my dad's care. My older sister lives in Nebraska, so it provides additional reassurance that I am close to them. And these were things I wasn't expecting in my early to mid-20s to have to learn. But I've learned more about myself working with hidden helpers in our community. And every time they talk, I can relate to something in each of their unique stories, whether it's having a close bond with your mother as you help your father, the need to contribute to the family to reduce the caregiver stress, and the uncertainty of what your future will be like. It makes you feel less alone, and that every family dynamic is not perfect, and that's okay. One caregiver who I worked with early on actually told me that her husband lives at a VA facility, that her daughters are both adults, and they know their mom and dad don't live together, but they're not divorced, which is my situation. It's helped me to look back on things that happened during this time in my life, and even moments throughout my childhood that I realized were very traumatic in nature. But through the foundation and families we work with and our partners, I realized and I received a lot of clarity and validation, and it pushes me to continue to do the work that I do and share my story with you all. So thank you for letting me do so.
Lauryn, thank you. Really appreciate that beautiful, vulnerable story of how you discovered you were a hidden helper, and especially appreciate you sharing a little bit of your decision-making process as a young adult and how being a hidden helper played into the choices you made for your life. Kelly, as a caregiver with hidden helpers and being so deeply connected into the caregiving community, could you tell us a little bit about how you as a parent see kids playing roles in the household with a wounded and ill veteran?
Absolutely. So a little bit of background, my children, we have 3 children, they're 6, 11, and 10. They were all born after my husband was transitioning out of active duty. So it's interesting, as you know, there's children who grew up in military households, military connected veteran households, that actually did not see any of that time where he was in the military. He was in, on deployments, things like that. So it's something that seemed very foreign at first, to really struggle to find a connection in a community that understood that nuance and that level of explanation needed of, no, he's not currently serving, but there are still ramifications. There are still things that the children pick up on. There's things that they have to step in and do. There's some traumas that come with watching a parent go through some difficult situations, as Lauryn so eloquently put it earlier. And so it's very interesting watching my children grow within this umbrella of being in a veteran family. And, we sort of have a 1-2 punch in our house. My husband is an Army veteran. I care for him, mostly invisible injuries. But our middle child also had cancer last year and is in remission currently. But specifically, my oldest child, my son, who is almost 12, really took on a dual caregiving role, as he's beginning to understand some of the way his dad's energy shifts and changes, some of the ways he has to modulate his own energy and actions, or things that might, set my husband off. Or if my husband's, let's say, having a migraine, ways in which he can help. He knows he can turn the lights down. He knows he can, get the kids to go outside. He knows he can sort of do a few things to bring the temperature and the energy down, so that my husband can have some space to recover. within all of that, he also took on this other role of, being the big kid in a family that had very difficult times, caring for multiple people at once. And he took on the brunt of it. On any given weekday, you can find him making dinner. This kid loves to cook. I mean, he takes it upon himself, the incredible initiative and role that he takes on to really help out the family. All of that being said, he is still a kid, and we're very much trying to balance these roles that he does naturally pick up on and things that are providing care and assistance and all of that, with having those discussions of, why are we doing this? Like, why are you helping me out? What's going on with daddy? How are you feeling? We really appreciate it. And also, you don't have to do this all the time. You are still a kid. I still want you to be a kid. You don't have to, you don't have to take mom and dad on as your job, but as a part of this family together, we all work together on this. And so that's sort of our perspective and our experiences with these hidden helpers. And I think as time goes on, the conversations can be more robust as they get older and understand. And that's where some of these incredible resources come into play, where we can have things like, Sesame Street, where you can introduce that to children when they're younger, have resources like mental health, where you can work on these discussions together. So it really has been quite a journey. But that's a little snapshot into our experience over here.
Thank you, Kelly. So important to have that lived experience, right? We have research, we have the information, we have the resources, but I always like to say, let's take a not about me, without me approach. And so being able to hear from both of you about what that lived experience looks like in the household, and especially Kelly doing just a beautiful job of articulating that balance that you have to find. That's such a challenge as a caregiver too, right? To find balance in anything, let alone in supporting your child in that. And Lori, I think you and your team at Camp Corral have done some of this research as well and can provide some insight onto what Lauryn and Kelly were sharing. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what y'all have learned in your many years of working with the hidden helper population?
Absolutely. We have, first off, we identified some common self-perceptions in our surveys, and I'm just going to give you a couple of them. So there was a common need to be close in case something happens. There was a common feeling of, I feel tired at school because of caregiving. I feel proud that I take care of them, and I feel guilty if I'm not at home to help. And also, I wish other kids understood. And then when we asked them, what do you wish people knew what it's like to have a sick or injured parent at home? They told us, one, they want people to know that it's hard. It's not easy. They're taking on additional responsibilities, but they also said PTSD affects their entire family. It's a whole family situation. They're constrained in outside activities, and they just aren't able to participate as much as they would like. They feel sad sometimes and hurt, and sometimes it can be confusing, and they want others to know that. And they want respect for their injured parent or for their sick parent. That's really important to them. But I think it's really important to remember that they also feel and they want people to know that they're resilient and that they've got it, but they just need a little bit of help. And then whenever we get into some of the statistics. Now, more than 80% of the kids that we're working with have identified as caregivers, but it's really interesting because there was a significant disparity between the children and the parents, and the parents the children actually thought they were doing more in the caregiving roles than the parents really were identifying. The same was true with the child having like ample time to do extracurricular activities. The kids said, I don't really have time. And the parents were like, oh yes, they have plenty of time. And then there was also the children identifying a feeling that they're more grown up and that they're taking on grown up responsibilities, where a lot of times it was the parents' perception that really isn't the case as much. We had, of the children, 75% said they just don't want to talk about it a lot of the times. Again, it's sad and it hurts, it's hard and it's difficult, constraints to activities, and then we get back to the PTSD. But when we talk to the parents and we ask them what they thought or what's going on with them, they said that about 60% of the parents said that at least one of their children has used mental health services, and also that their children are withdrawn from their friends. 45% said their children were withdrawn from friends. 29% said that their children get upset when they're separated from their families. And then also they were seeing a serious decline in academics as well. This is the really alarming part. They said 23% said that their children have talked about self-harm. 17% said that a non-family adult expressed concern about their child. So maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a minister, or, a coach has said, hey, I have some concerns and, maybe we should talk about this. Also, almost 17% had talked about suicide. 14% had engaged in self-harm. So whether it's cutting, pulling hair, whatever they could be doing to just kind of feel some sense of control, I guess. And then also about 3% had actually attempted suicide. So what can we do to help? And we actually, from our research and listening to the parents and listening to the children, we have some big pieces that we think are really important. One is connections, making sure that the kids are connected with others who get it, but also giving them the opportunities to engage with their schoolmates. Mental wellness, of course, is vital, which, praise and appreciation, and remembering to recognize when they're doing something above and beyond. Stress relief, like yoga, art, sports. This last year, as I mentioned earlier, we started our virtual programs where we're doing things like this, and we're surprised at the number of people who are joining us, but they're involving mom and dad and grandma and grandpa, and they're getting the whole group involved, which gives them the opportunity for some real quality time. Respite, teaching children how to respite, and we will be releasing our Time to Take 5 video coming up soon that teaches kids how to respite. And of course, emotional behavior coping skills, like specifically addressing self-esteem and confidence, and emotional intelligence, anger management, mindfulness, and journaling. And journaling is one of the things we do at camp, but we know that it can be very self-soothing. So all of that to say that we did have some really good positive. I think it's important to start with positive and end with positive as well. The staff at our summer camps actually identified that our military kids and the caregivers are very well behaved. They were very open and comfortable talking about their home situation, which is really good, and that they seem to be really close to their siblings, and that their siblings seem to be very supportive. And so that's where we are.
Thank you, Lori. That is a lot of wonderful information, and I feel like definitely echoed what Lauren and Kelly just shared too. And so, Sabrina, I'd like to talk to you about the impressive work that Sesame Street has done of developing a proactive approach for the younger children and really creating this guidance for families walking through this caregiving journey together. Could you share a little bit about how this community, these providers, the people on the call can utilize those resources to help our caregivers understand their children and talk to their children, have those coaching conversations, and really steer towards the positive side of the spectrum of caregiving.
Of course. Thank you, Hannah. And, at Sesame, we have a saying that when a service member or veteran needs caregiving, that whole family is providing that caregiving. And I think Kelly and Lauren, you summed up that beautifully. Our focus is really those young children, that 3 to 8, and there are silent heroes in this journey, right? And it is a journey. So for us is, how do we look at it from a strength-based approach and really support families, particularly parents, explain caregiving to children, and children to know that they can feel safe and all these challenges, what it looks like for their family. And to also what Lori was saying, it's really about listening. Sesame is not a military organization. So for us to really understand what the space needs and what our role is, it's to listen to families like Kelly's and Lauren's, to really make sure that what we're doing is appropriate and meets the needs of these families. And what we really heard was it is a journey, right, for these families. It's like every day is different. So how that translates, and, I'm going to try to be really concrete for all of the providers here. So hopefully you'll see the benefit of how you can use some of these resources. Is kids at that age, especially when you're trying to explain something that they can't see, that's really challenging, like TBI, PTSD. But what you can explain is what that manifests as. So we tried to use something like the weather to explain caregiving, and I'll tell you how we did that. And the star of our work here is actually Rosita. Many of you may not know, but Rosita is our 5-year-old on Sesame Street. She's my favorite Muppet. And her puppy was it was served in the military. He came back. He's in a wheelchair, and he also does have silent injuries. So Rosita and her family are really the ambassadors of this content we've created, especially with her mom being a primary caregiver, but then also Rosita's role in this family's, right, as a 5-year-old. How we explain caregiving to families and kids is through the weather. This concept of here is your journey, but every day is a little different. There's sunny days when my family's doing great. Kids and parents are feeling confident, safe, spending time together. Some days it's a little bit more challenging. It's a little cloudy, dad or mom may not be feeling great, the parent or caregiver person who needs the caregiving. And then some days are really just tough. We call them our stormy days, and we have big stormy feelings, and kids may just miss those sunny days. Kids may just not understand what's going on. So with our resources, it's really important for us to help parents, particularly give them those strategies and talking points they can with young kids through these resources that we've created. And Rosita is really the representation, I think, of Lauren, maybe your 5-year-old self, of, a little child who's in this caregiving family and not really knowing what's going on. And, how do we help them understand a few different things? Really, that injuries and illnesses change over time. And how do they really know that even though today might be really hard, tomorrow can be better? And for the parents to also learn how to relearn almost what, I don't know if Kelly, you could speak to this later, of what parenting looks like when you're also a caregiver to your husband, but then also parenting for your child. And then looking at, your oldest 11-year-old and making sure whatever they're doing, how is it also appropriate to make them also feel like a kid again, right? So there's all these different kind of challenges you're trying to navigate. And then before I turn it back to you, Hannah, I'd love to explain how we do this with our content. So what Sesame does is we create different content in different ways. We call them multimedia because also kids and parents learn and want to show and engage things in different ways. So we have videos, we have games, we have printable activities. An example of one of our videos is with Rosita, and it's really about TBI, because that's what her daddy has. And in this episode of this really short video, it's Rosita's getting ready for her dance recital, really excited her dad was going to come, and then he couldn't make it. because he was really having a hard day, right? And it's how Rosita's mom explains to her that because Papi has an injury, it's something you can't see. It's an injury inside his head. It affects his ability some days to really be present as a parent, right? And knowing that mom's going to be there for her. And then, you know, in the future, there's other ways we can navigate this, and he will be at a recital in the future. So things like that, with showing a video, sharing that with a child, and then giving those talking points and strategies to have that conversation for the parent with the child. We also do this. I just share one more example with a game. You know, I mentioned the sunny, stormy, cloudy kind of like navigation of how we do that. It's a game where kids have that agency. So they're playing a game with their parent. Days when my family is feeling really sunny, we're all outside. We might be in the park. We're playing music. Some days are a little cloudy for my family. That means dad, or in Rosita's case, it's her dad. He's not feeling that great. So we're inside. We're doing some quiet activities, right? Because we don't want to be maybe too loud. We want to feel a little cozy, create kind of a nice ambiance. And then the days that are really stormy, daddy needs his time alone and Rosita's in her room. And for her that day, it's really important for her to know that she can feel safe, that she is loved. And we're showing her mom really reinforcing those messages and being with her. And how can she create a calming setting? Because there's a lot of anxiety and stress in that family that day. So everything from drawing, a quiet activity to help her feel better. We do this great thing at Sesame called glitter jars that parents can build with their kids. And then you could just watch the glitter settle, another calming activity. So our goal with all these different types of resources, I just named a few, is to really give it to providers who serve these families like you here today. And we package these, and even in professional development, and I'll talk about that, you know, maybe in the breakout or a little later, on making sure you have some of these tools if you are supporting families with young children, that they're ready to go, they're in your toolbox, nothing you have to recreate, but can really just complement the work that you're doing already.
Awesome. Thank you, Sabrina. And I'm going to throw it back to Kelly to talk a little bit about what you mentioned on the parenting side. And then we also have a question about how do we help hidden helpers, caregiving children, reduce their stress? And so, Kelly, from your perspective and being connected with that community and being a parent yourself, what would you ask of this group of clinicians, providers, others who are supporting veterans to do to help reduce your child's stress? And then Allison or Caitlin, just give me an indicator when we need to move into breakout groups.
That's an excellent question. It is this, you know, everyone has sort of touched on it earlier today. When it's a caregiving household, everyone is affected. If it's, you know, like we said, PTSD, it's the whole family, it's the whole unit, it's everybody. Specifically for children, it's really hard sometimes. And I know over at Sesame, you guys are incredible with all of this, but it's really hard to get the children to acknowledge their stress. A lot of the times it's that whole, you know, analogy of the frog in the boiling water, like slowly, slowly, slowly. They don't realize what they're dealing with is more stressful than their peers. So, you know, when they then have some of these outcomes of the stress, whether it's being, like Lori was saying, being tired at school, grades suffering, things of that nature, a lot of the time it then adds another layer of guilt or shame into it as well. When not acknowledged, when the caregiving is not said out loud, identified, named, all of those things, you know, it can tend to become a source of stress for children that will manifest in many, many different ways. For us, and like Sabrina was mentioning, with the sunny and stormy days, we've actually done that with our children. We have the workbooks, we have everything. We just use a ton of different types of metaphors. I think that for parents specifically, having, like you were saying, those tools in your toolbox that you can access easily and are easy to communicate to your children, where you can identify the issue, you can name it, quite literally, you can name it. It could be a storm. You could give it, like, it could be named Bob. Like, you could name however you want to name what that feeling feels like for the child, so that it opens up this opportunity for communication. And then, I think as parents, it's really difficult to try and find the line of how much you share and what age groups. For example, our 6-year-old, we won't talk with her the same way that we would talk with, an almost 12-year-old, but they still get it. And the more common the discussions are around stress reduction, mental health, things of that nature within your household, the less foreign it becomes. And so, we oftentimes also talk about it like a pressure cooker, where if you don't release some of your steam from time to time, whether that is in journaling, whether that is in going and riding your bike around the block, playing with a friend, even if it's something that you need to take your mind away and just, play a video game for a few minutes, that's a form of self-care in its own right. And so I think when we have that open dialogue, when we can say, look, it seems like maybe your pressure cooker is getting a little high. Is there anything you would like to share? Let's go for a walk. Let's talk about it. Let's get some of these feelings out so that we don't explode. But we all do explode sometimes. And so it's okay to then also identify that as, hey, this happens. This is normal. You are still just as loved, just as valued, just, everything. This is a normal human emotion. So I think, the things that we've seen has been the most helpful, and the incredible tools that we've been able to utilize really center around naming something, identifying the problem, and really having the most robust conversations age appropriately that you can, so that it just becomes the norm within the family to identify it. Or if you need a mental health day, that's okay too. They don't understand why dad might be in bed in the dark all day. Well, he's having a tough day. And so, just like you mentioned with the dance recital and all of that kind of stuff with Rosita, it's a very difficult thing to balance. But I think giving the kids the opportunity to share and to talk, even the younger ones, just in a different way, is really, really important.
Thank you, Kelly. That was a wonderful summation of what would be helpful in this community. I know this is an important topic to Lauryn too, so I'd love to give you a couple minutes to share as well. I know we are getting close to the end of our time, and so I do want to just say I threw Sesame's link in the chat, as well as Camp Corral's resource page too, for some additional resources on this.
Yeah, of course. As soon as I heard the question, I immediately wrote down in my notes, open conversation, because it took a while for my mom and I to develop an open dialogue, since she's my best friend. It's us against the world when it comes to caring and managing my dad's care. And there are ways to include hidden helpers in these conversations without it feeling like you're exposing your kids to these difficult topics. Of course, you want to be mindful about like what's comfortable within the own family dynamic and what you're comfortable talking about with. But because for me, I felt like I was shut out of my dad's care, where I saw it as I could be there for my mom to provide additional support. I wanted to be, I didn't want to be an additional cause of stress, because I wasn't sure what I could do in terms of a crisis or an emergency where I had to step up, because I didn't know what was going on. I wanted to be prepared. And I don't think like pressure is placed on kids in these roles, but we place more pressure on ourselves because we want to stand up to the plate and help when we need to. So we put a lot more pressure on ourselves, and I think parents worry about putting additional roles and responsibilities on children because we feel like we can contribute and rely on your family.
Thank you, Lauryn. That was important for everybody to hear too, and having that conversation as a whole. I feel like you and Kelly are echoing each other there very well. With just 2 minutes left, Sabrina or Lori, do you have anything you want to share on that reducing stress quickly before we move into breakouts?
I'll just jump in really quickly and just talk about the importance of just taking time to respite and helping them identify those things that they really enjoy doing. And we have what we call like a Respite Square to identify, like, what are those things that you really enjoy doing for 5 minutes? If you have 5 minutes, what can you do in 5 minutes that's going to just calm you and help you feel more relaxed? Same with like 15 minutes and then 60 minutes and maybe a day, like we talked about a mental health day. So just being able to just have those things written down so that whenever they do have that extra time, to just remind them, hey, you have an extra 5 minutes or 15 minutes, go do something you really enjoy doing.
Sabrina, I saw you came off mute quick earlier. Do you want to?
Sure. I think just one thing listening to Kelly, I just remembered was, and Kelly, please correct me if I'm wrong, especially with the young kids, what we hear over and over again, kids, thrive with routines. So it's so important with little kids that reminding them that although we're going through this journey, although we have these challenging moments ahead, there's some things that don't change, right? Like, I don't know, maybe every Tuesday we still try to make pizza, or we have bedtime, or, at this hour, and we sing this song together as a family on those sunny days. So just reminding kids, and it's part of that safety, right? Like, things will change for our family, but there's some things that are consistent, and that gives them that security. And that's what we've heard from our, hidden helpers in those families. So just to really share that with all of the providers again today.
Thank you all so much for all of that wonderful information. I wish we had more time to unpack because there is a lot of important things here to talk about, but that can happen in our breakouts. So I'm going to pass it back over to Caitlin and Allison for breakouts.
All right. Thank you, Hannah, Lauren, Kelly, Lori, and Sabrina for that great panel conversation. I'm going to hand it over to Allison. She's going to talk about the breakout activities and how we can further this conversation to learn more about resources and ways to improve support.
Thanks, Caitlin. For the next 25 minutes, we are going to go into breakout groups. In a few minutes, I'm going to open the breakout rooms for the collaborative conversation activity. When the room's open, you'll be able to self-select a topic and go to that room. You select the room by clicking the blue join right beside each of the topic. And today's topic are resources to support military children with Sabrina Huda, and one of our note takers, and there's going to be Ashley today. Topic 2 is going to be caregiver support with Lauren and Kelly. And topic number 3 is going to be services and programs for military children with Lauryn Noonan. In order to have time as much possible as we can, please keep your introductions to each other down really short, like just say your name and who you work for. And then we're going to come back together in 25 minutes to wrap up and hear some of the key takeaways from each group. The leaders, you can either share yourself the key takeaways, or you can have somebody else if you want to identify them to share. All right, I'm going to open the rooms now. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's great to see your faces all and everyone. So we're going to go ahead and start with our, let's see, let me make sure I get these back. I think we do. Yep. We're going to go ahead and start with our key takeaways. So for group number 1, resources to support military children. Sabrina, did y'all pick a person to share?
Oh gosh, we didn't, but we were just having such a nice, engaging conversation. I think, and please, anyone on the teams, please share. But I'd love to just highlight, I guess the key takeaway for us is, for me particularly, was, working with, this learning about what everyone was, how they're supporting military and veteran families. And just a reminder again that for, Sesame Street, we've been doing this for 15 years, but many folks don't know that. And it's always a new generation of providers who are in this space, new generation of veterans. So how important, for us, Allison, is for Sesame Street, like just being so thankful to be involved in these sort of panels, so we can just also let, especially providers who do this hard work, know that there's all these free resources available to you when you're speaking to young kids. And a lot of our resources age up too. So just knowing that these things are available out there to help support your work, and we're listening. And we were really getting started to talk about other things that we could do to support. And then I know we had to come back, but please, anyone else on my team, if you wanted to add anything, please, any other takeaways you heard.
Well, sounds like you guys had an excellent conversation. Stacy, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love the resources Sabrina shared, but even something I was thinking, maybe they're written for children, but the reality is the adults are going through the same thing. And I've spent about 18 months just learning how to be a transition coach, and really everything that the children are experiencing, the adults are as well. So even service providers, for the adults can read through this and maybe not necessarily say Big Bird, although it might be a sense of comfort from your childhood. So, again, these resources are timeless and classic for everybody, across age, or, everything. So just thank you so much.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, I'm super impressed always that Sesame Street is really so focused on helping every child, including those hidden helpers that are here amongst us. So topic 2, caregiver support. That was Lauren and Kelly. Did you guys have someone that volunteered to give the takeaways, or are you going to do it for us, Lauren?
I believe it was Joshua Wilson. He was our note taker.
Yay, Josh.
I completely called him out.
No, it's totally wonderful. And I've got the notes here. Yeah. So we did have a good discussion. Everybody participated, and we appreciate that from you guys. We've got a list of resources. So Allison, they'll be coming your way, and they'll be going to everybody who wasn't in this particular breakout. But yeah, we talked about potential gaps in the service area, such as direct childcare aid. For single parents, it's always difficult. And we found some things that may be childcare fee assistance support with the childcare awareness. We have that, and respite relief. We talked about Bob Hope Fund for critical financial assistance. So there's a link that we'll share for that. And we talked about child care development and the 15 things that, people can learn for military children. We have that link from Psych Armor. So those resources were really cool. It was interesting to hear everybody ask questions and share their tactics on how they're, helping out caregivers and families. So glad to be a part of that.
Thank you. And we will share all the stuff that people get from the breakout with my note takers, and anything that was in the chat box we share as well. So those will be coming to you after and during this week. My last group was services and programs for military kids. Lori kind of led that discussion. So did you guys have somebody, Lori, or are you going to help?
I think it will be me. We had a little bit of a quiet group, and but we did talk a little bit about first, we've identified that finding services for youth caregivers, youth military caregivers especially, is really difficult. There just really aren't a lot out there. We did talk about some good organizations who are doing great work. Clearly, Hidden Helpers and Elizabeth Dole Foundation is one of them. But we also talked about some other resources that could be available to children who have a wounded, ill, or fallen parent. But then also we talked about, well, what about those families that maybe their parent isn't wounded, but they're deployed, and the children are still stepping up in some way or the other. So they're maybe helping care for, a sibling when mom or dad are gone. And so we talked about what resources are available for that. And so we had a really nice conversation about that. We also talked about some additional ways to keep kids engaged, and there are camps like Camp Corral, but then also it was mentioned that the Guard actually does camps for kids. So if you are in a certain area, especially if you're, Guard or Reserve, which I learned last weekend that is kind of an undertapped population in regards to services. So that would be a really good one. And then also there, our need to pay attention to indigenous populations, such as the Navajo Nation. That was a big one as well, and making sure that I think all of our populations know about the services that we're doing. And then it was talked about how EDF and Hidden Helpers would be doing a national resource guide or some directory. So we're really looking forward to that, because clearly a lot of us don't know a lot. We have a lot to learn still.
Hey, there's a lot of information out there, and that's one of those reasons why we have these battle rhythms monthly. And Caitlin, I am going to pass the presentation back over to you to close this out for the day.
All right, thank you, Allison, and thank you so much, Hannah, Lauren, Kelly, Lori, and Sabrina again for the informative panel and leading the breakout discussions. Our next battle rhythm will take place on May 2nd, 2022, and we will focus on examining the issues of warrior substance abuse. We hope that you can all attend. Thank you all for collaborating and sharing. America's Warrior Partnership's ultimate goal is to improve the quality of life for veterans and to end veteran suicide by empowering local communities to know all veterans and serve them holistically before a crisis occurs. America's Warrior Partnership's model, community integration, amplifies local efforts by bringing the community veteran serving organizations together to bridge the gaps in available services and by connecting local groups to national resources. We believe communities are best equipped to improve the quality of life for veterans, and we hope that today's battle rhythm provided you with powerful insight, best practices, new partners, and tools to do just that. Again, thank you all. Have a great spring break and a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.